in dealing with this thing with what Malcolm has been doing, there's two parts to it. There's the intrigue and the conspiracy shit in the background, going back to his run-ins with and others, right? Then there's the technology itself and the science, right? When I went on the Joe Rogan show, my understanding of the science is still rudimentary. And I know a whole lot more now about it than I did a year ago. And I've had the benefit of spending many hours with him going through creating this slideshow, and as we're going through it, breaking it down, seeing how the machinery works, how plasmoids are generated, how they're harvested, how they're utilized, how you create an electromagnetic containment field, really interesting stuff. Here's what happened. We went on Joe, and I thought, okay, well, Malcolm was with us, and I thought, well, it'd be good if I had Malcolm on there. So when I'm trying to explain some of the science and the technology, I could defer to him with respect to specific questions, right? If it's ever aired, you'll see that I'm constantly trying to steer it back to the conversation. Eventually, I think Joe started coming around. I got enough stuff in it. He started seeing some of the connections with the actual plasma-based technology. But at the end of it, he comes up and says, could you consider coming back where it's just you? And I said, yeah, I could do that. But then I thought, okay, well, the good thing is that, every month, every week or month that goes by, my grasp and understanding of this science is improving. I pretty much started from close to square one a year ago. But so then he said, well, I want to vet this a little further. So I'm going to hold off maybe, and I'm not going to air it right away. Fine. Look, whatever you want to do, Joe, is 100% okay with me. And that's kind of where we left it. But then we came back, and that's when I got down with Mike Robertson, the CEO of HowTube. He's been doing all the graphics, and we've recorded video clips. And what we're doing, this slideshow that's up to 230 slides now, is about explaining the technology and actually going back into some of the ancient traditions, the molten sea at King Solomon's temple, the Vajra wielded by Indra, by Zeus, by Mitra, what the symbolism behind that was. So this is all of this material that I've been gathering together. Now, there's that part of it, and then there's the implementation of it. There's about half a dozen prototype machines that have been built. And they've gone through stage 1 testing. In our slideshow, we've got links to videos where you can see there's one testing in Alaska, one is in the Maldives, one is in Tasmania, or Bangkok rather, one is in London, where independent groups are testing retrofitting internal combustion engines and so on, diesel engines, which are just basically applications of the fundamental principles of using plasmoids to harness all the waste energy and waste heat that's being ejected, that's being produced as a byproduct of fossil fuel-based energy. So on Saturday he leaves, and he's essentially got interest. Now, I've been involved in some quite high-level conversations with, for example, Com Carpentier, who's he's the head of the India Foundation, which is a liaison between the Indian government and the French government. And he has access to the highest echelons of the Indian government. About 2 months ago, we had a Zoom meeting. He was in India at the time, where we spent about an hour and a half going through the technology, excuse me, the ideas, the basic principles. He took that to the Indian government, and somebody in the Indian government then brought it to the largest automobile manufacturer in the country, which I forget the name of it, but they're very interested in the technology. In the next 3 to 6 months, it's very possible that we see this technology, some of the applications of this technology. Actually, one of the things that they're very interested too is they've come up with a prototype scrubber for coal stacks that captures all of the carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, the effluents, the particulate mass, breaks it down at the atomic level and recycles it. So now it gets really involved, and it's, you know, my thought is that by April, I'll have enough, my understanding of it will be enough that I can include some of it, because I definitely think there are Grail applications. Once you begin to realize that what these plasmoids are, and how I originally connected with this inventor was about 7 years ago. He called me from his island place of refuge where he had built a laboratory, and he was just telling me that, and he began sending me stuff, and basically it all works on frequencies. You use frequencies to create an electromagnetic containment field, and then from that you can now control matter. And if you know what plasma is the fourth state of matter, and it has very, very interesting properties. For example, it can conduct electromagnetic fields, and it can be contained and shaped by, and its natural form, geometric form, is a torus, a donut shape. But the idea is that you can harness plasmoids to do work. And he's shown how you would use it, for example, to cut rock. And he's gone to quarries in the Middle East and taken samples of rock faces in quarries, and shows how there has been transmutation of the elements in the surface of these rocks that would be consistent with being cut with a high intensity plasmoid. And that's just the beginning of it. So yeah, it seems to me that there's a place to bring it in. That'll be one of the challenges that as I'm going forward and learning, you know, I'm beginning to see how this begins to have applications in the ancient traditions. And so I've been I've got this slideshow that, well, let's see. Maybe I'll quickly just pull up one thing here. If I've got it handy here, I don't want to take any more time, because I'm going to have to sign out in about 5 to 10 minutes, actually.
So this is the Grail technology that you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would be the hypothesis to be tested, that the Grail technology may have involved the utilization of plasmoids, which are energies. It's the fourth state of matter, and basically you go from solid to liquid to gas, and in each case you get greater degrees of freedom between the electron and the neutron. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a solid, they're very tightly bound. Into a liquid, they're loosely bound, but they're still attached. In a gas, they're still attached. The neutrons are not ions stripped of electrons. When you get up to enough energy input, the electrons and the neutrons completely disassociate, and they're moving with complete total degrees of freedom. At that point, they can now become subject to conducting energy. And I think that the key, perhaps, to one of the ancient technological utilizations of this was being able to conduct that energy. Even in one of the things in the demonstrations, and I have videos of this showing the tremendous pressures that can be created. Now, one of the possibilities is that if you have a rectilinear block and you can increase that the pressure of the plasma beneath the rock, it will literally lift the rock. I would pull up this slideshow very quickly. Hopefully I've got it handy here. I should have it handy here. I think this is it. Okay, this is Indra wielding the Vajra at the Kandariya Mahadev temple. The power of 8, the Ashta Dikpalas and Ashtavasus. Anyways, you see this all over the temples. And see, here's another version of Indra holding the Vajra. You can see the Vajra would be right here. You can see that in Indra's right hand. And there are different ways of depicting the Vajra. It was also the thunderbolt. And yeah.
Look at these different varieties here.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the thing. This center here, in other words, according to Malcolm, this was actually like just a replication of a machine that was able to conduct plasmas. And so he's built these models.
Hey, Randall, can you go back to that last image just for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I see at the center of that?
What?
It looks like a Templar cross almost.
Oh, yeah, it sure does. Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Like-
curious.
Yeah, good catch.
My first thought exactly.
Yep. And
Oh, yeah, look at that.
yep.
Huh.
Look, here he is. This is the Vajra or the Thunderbolt. And important thing to note, the spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's another depiction of Zeus hurling a thunderbolt. The Vajra.
Right.
So when you see that spiral, I want you to look at this. This is part of one component of a machine. We'll come back to that. I'll show you this rather quick here. Here
Oh,
is
yeah.
Mithraic Kronos. Look right here on his chest. There's the Vajra, right? So
And you're suggesting this is a vessel or an instrument that is used to generate power?
yes,
Okay.
this you'll appreciate, the molten sea. Now we're not going to get into it tonight, but I may get into some of this in April. The volume computations of the molten sea and how they relate to the geometry of the temple is
Right.
extremely interesting.
Oh, I bet.
And
And
then
the
here's
twin pillars in front. Yeah.
yeah, and here's natural manifestations of plasma. You know, now the idea here is that the lightning bolt is the electrical discharge, but it's preceded by a filament of plasma that connects the upper, like the ionosphere, with the surface of the earth. So that's one form of plasma. Here's another, coronal mass ejections
Yeah.
are plasma. Aurora borealis is plasma. The ion tail of comets is pure plasma. Ball lightning. So anyways, here we're not going to get into it now, but I'm going to just show you, like, here's a video at a shop in Alaska where was retrofitting a internal combustion engine. Like, here's a video of now Roland Perry. He's one of the foremost authors in Australia. He's written over 30 books. And he's also an investigative reporter. And he investigated Malcolm and all of these accusations made against him, that he was a con man and all of this kind of stuff, and totally refuted it. But so he does an interesting video here where he's talking with a couple of mechanics that have just done a 4 or 5 hour retrofit of an internal combustion engine and are demonstrating how, using a Bosch analyzer, how it's capturing all the bad stuff coming out of the exhaust pipe and recycles it, breaks it down at the atomic level, and then reuses it again. Here's part of one of the machines that was built for an industrial use. This is a video of a retrofit of I think this was a diesel generator, using the technology. And here's the key of the whole thing here, which he calls the thunderstorm generator. Over here is called the plasmoid generator, which creates the plasmoids that are then harvested and cycled into this system. It's way too complicated to get into now. But so I've got all of these video clips of the testing of the prototypes under different applications. And this is the unfinished one. This was like from 3 weeks ago, but you can see, like, here's a retrofit of a generator. Oh, let's see. Here's one of the basic principles using this Hilch vortex tube, which is an amazing thing, which works but can't be explained. There's a compressed air is introduced, and then it comes into this tube where under high pressure, what happens is the cold air and the hot air separate. And so look at here, you've got maximum recorded temperature coming out of one end of the, and there's no moving parts to this. You can look it up online, learn about it. Look at here, maximum recorded temperature, 200 degrees centigrade coming out of one end. At the other end, maximum recorded minimum temperature, -50 centigrade. So that's 250 degrees difference centigrade. Well,
Yeah.
this is the basic idea behind this thing here. Let's see if we can see it. This thing right here, what he calls the thunderstorm generator. And the proportions of this is, you'll appreciate this. Let me find a bigger one here where you can really see the yeah, okay, here's a cross section of it, and it works on the same principle as the Hilch tube. It separates it separates the positive and the negative ions, then reintroduces them. They're both set into a vorticular spiral motion, and they then speed up as they're going to this 0 point, which, let's see, I'll back up. I'll show you this here. Yeah, so it's based on this right here. So you have a collapsed sphere. So you start with a sphere, you collapse the north and south pole along an axis, and they'll meet at the equator. And then
Yep.
using geometry and the principles of plasma physics, you can generate a stream of plasma that actually follows a Fibonacci curve
No way.
down to this 0 point. The northern hemisphere, the plasmoid swarm, which is moving faster and faster as it spirals down this vortex, it's moving clockwise. At the southern hemisphere, it's moving
the other way.
counterclockwise. They meet at this 0 point, and right there, this is where the energy is being extracted.
Ah,
It's extremely interesting stuff. So he's built a model. Right now, these models are being tested. This is what he calls the electron scavenger. And it's a model of the elements, and all of the elements are arrayed on here. And they're following this Fibonacci spiral down to the center of the vortex,
Yep.
where they meet at ionized hydrogen. And I'm just now really learning how all of this works. Here's the whole thing demonstrated out in a model of reality, a model of creation. And when you go through here, all of the numbers from sacred geometry, from sacred architecture, from the great time cycles, from the day to the year to the great year, the planetary cycles, they're all unified in this model.
wow.
The plasmoid unification model. And then these are just, again, showing some of the technical applications of, and so they're now in. What's going to happen is by the end of February, there's a lot of this stuff is going to be undergoing the stage 2 testing. So I'm kind of holding off. And see, this was a lot of the stuff we didn't get into on the Rogan show. There's the stuff here to show you, okay, here's a large industrial scale. This is a Caterpillar generator. Like they use this, like over at Emory University, they use the same exact model of G3508E V8 generator as their backups for the hospitals and everything. But here you've got one that's been retrofitted with this technology. As it turns out, the dimensions here of this, and it's a series of concentric tubes where you have the ionized material, they fill it with argon gas, and then they ionize that, and it becomes a vehicle for the conveyance of the plasmoids. And there's a point right here, the 0 point, where the negative, see right here, you've got the negative sign, over
Yep.
here, you've got a positive sign.
Positive. Yep.
You've got the positive ions coming down this way, accelerating the negatives, and they meet right here at this 0 point. And what happens is they begin to accumulate, almost like coral or something. The plasmoids begin to accumulate on the inside of the tube. And each plasmoid has this gravitational potent center, which is almost in a way like a mini black hole. But when you get a ring distribution of these plasmoids, what happens is that whole gravitational structure becomes unified, and they collectively begin to create an implosion point, which is sort of the correlation to a black hole. So what happened here, they ran it up. They wanted to see what the limits of the system were in this case. Oh, and by the way, the dimensions like this of this sphere, which is a 24-inch sphere, it's got several concentric spheres within it, right? So you've got cold, you've got hot, you've got positive, you've got negative, churning through this thing in these different levels, and then they're eventually brought together. So at the point, the 0 point, where the positive and the negative are meeting, these plasmoids are accumulating on the inside ring, and then they create this 0 point, almost like a mini black hole, which is this really powerful gravitational implosive force. They ran it up, and then what happened was the pipe, which is thick, heavy gauge steel, literally ruptured right along that point. You can see in the next slide here what happened.
Oh, yeah.
This was from the implosive forces generated. Now, this was just to test the model to see how far they could ramp it up. They've scaled back from this. So they're not carrying it up to these levels, right? Here's the interesting thing, though. The dimensions and proportions of the pipes and the spheres taken directly from the molten sea.
Hmm.
And that's when you change, yeah,
at the time of the first temple, right?
Yes. And when you change the proportions, it doesn't work. Yeah. So
That's
it's
pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I've been working on this, learning this for 3 or 4 months now, and I feel like I'm, maybe graduated from kindergarten into first grade. But yeah, I mean, so there are means for dissipating the energy. And of course, when you start looking at the geometry and the forms by which excess energy is being dissipated, so that you don't get that, right? You want to dissipate the energy that's accumulating. Well, I mean, look, what you're looking at there, what is it? The Vajra? Is it a spire on a Hindu temple? Right?
Kind of looks like it, yeah.
It sure does, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot to it. And it gets to be very, very interesting stuff.
You said you have what, 230 slides?
Yes.
Is there a way to get it down to something that's more manageable for a group like this, or is this more your education here?
Well, this is ultimately, he's going to be taking this slideshow in the week after next. He's going to be presenting this slideshow to Mazda. Right now, I don't know how much he's going to get into with that, but I've got complete freedom to use it for whatever reason or purpose I want. I thought what I would do is try to boil it down and just introduce the ideas to people and say, now here's a potential solution to ancient technology.
Yeah.
And when you see if you guys want to do like another Zoom meeting before April, and I kind of tutor you in, like, take an hour and I tutor you guys in the basics of how this works and how I think some of it may have manifested in the ancient world.
Right.
And the plasmas are actually very restorative. And there's a machine right now that I've had confirmed both from Malcolm and a completely independent source that essentially works upon the plasma in the blood and rejuvenates your blood.